against.
Hell no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no, hell to the no.
Welcome into the 615 Sessions podcast here on this Friday, October the 11th. We're happy to have you in for another episode of the podcast. It is, of course, made possible by the fine folks at Zen Sports. We are nearing the sports equinox. We're not quite there yet because basketball is not yet back in our lives, but you can bet on all your favorite major sports with the Zen Sports app. Plug in the promo code ATOZTN in the Zen Sports app today. Nick Suss of the Tennessean is making his podcast debut. He's been on the radio show before, buddy. It's good to have you. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, in the office, so I had to make a backdrop for you. But yeah, happy to be here in the beautiful Tennessean office somewhere in a void.
It is a very pretty office building. I pass by it on my way to work every day. But at least you still have your soul. Me, I've sold out so much that basically everything that I do comes with a NASCAR-esque backdrop or signage or what have you. So at least you're maintaining your integrity.
This punk rock ethos I have to just write it up on the wall. Let's just go with it.
So we will see if the Tennessee Titans can punk the Indianapolis Colts this coming Sunday. And an interesting wrinkle in all of this, before we dive into Titan-centric discussion, because of course that's what we're here to do, Jordan Schultz just DM'd me on Twitter. He may have done the same to you because he tends to do this sometimes when he has news. But Michael Pittman, who was reportedly an IR candidate, has decided that he will try to play through the nagging back injury that's been hampering him. I mean, it's up to him. It's up to their medical experts. And as far as that goes, but if it was significant for him to be considered for IR, I can't imagine that he would be in a position to help his team on Sunday night.
Yeah, I obviously can't feel his pain. I don't know how bad it hurts, but this is a wild swing over a span of 72 hours or whatever it is. This is a very interesting saga. I mean, the Colts' skill positions, counting quarterback, are marred deeply by injury. So if they can have one guy back, that's awesome for them. But like, you don't want a guy who is playing at 50%. You don't want a guy who's playing at 70%. Like, if he can't go, maybe it's a limitation, maybe it's a pitch count. You truly never know with these guys. But with the physical brand he plays, especially, I mean, that's not the kind of guy you want to see taking a lot of hits if he's hurt. I just, again, it's up to him. It's his health. But I truly don't know how you'd do that.
Yeah, I mean, especially a back, and again, we're not professional athletes here, obviously, but anytime, I mean, hell, I've pulled something in my back, just swinging a trash bag around to try and get it in the trash can, and then been debilitated for a period of maybe not days, but maybe at least an hour or so or something like that. Like, if you screw up your back, it affects everything that you do.
Yeah, I threw out my back one time putting groceries in my car, and I couldn't drive home. Like, I was frigid the whole way home, just rigidly stuck. And I had to call my neighbor and be like, I'm passed out on my front steps. Can you take my melting dairy into the house? Like, back stuff hurts. It really hurts.
Yeah. So, more power to him, I guess. But this is the walking wounded, Nick. I mean, this is a stay relevant in the local sports scene game for the local professional football team, because as I mentioned, sports equinox not yet upon us, but we're getting there. And that means the college football full swing, NFL full swing, hockey is back, and the Preds expect to be a level of competitive that I don't think this team is aspiring to, at least not in this season. Like, if you don't beat the Colts, you cease to have meaning in the second week of October. I'm already kind of scared about the Vols hosting Florida this weekend. I shouldn't be, but I'm kind of scared that we're going to be dealing with the last relevant football weekend for either of these teams. But for the Titans, it's definitely more pressing at this point.
Yeah, especially when you look at the 2 weeks on the schedule after this. You got Buffalo and Detroit immediately after that. I'm not writing them off as losses, but look, those are two of the best teams in the NFL. If you are 1-4 going into those games, you don't feel super great, especially when the two of the three cupcakes on the schedule that you were supposed to see are Washington and Minnesota, who are suddenly like actual contenders right now. Like, you thought that November was going to be this, it eases up, it gets easier. And then boom, two of the teams with the best records in football that were supposed to be top 5 pick teams. So I don't know. You need to win this one for a morale perspective. You need to not feel like your back's against the wall going against, what is it, 5 of the next 7 weeks, or teams that suddenly have Super Bowl aspirations. That's tough. It's really tough.
No, especially I can't imagine what Brian Flores is thinking, looking at Will Levis and some of the mistakes he's made, and just being like, "Oh boys, we got a good one coming up here in the not too distant future." That's the place that we'll start, because he's going to start. Will Levis. Brian Callahan said it today. I wasn't over there for the availability. Radio show was still ongoing, but I know you were. Jeff Simmons is going to play in this game. He's dealing with a torn UCL. Fully torn UCL, which apparently he can, go through the season and not have to have the surgery until the end of the season and be able to, function nearly as normal. It's just based on what he's feeling, I guess, at any given point. And they've been resting him in preparation for this game. But you wrote about Levis and his meme ability, and how that tracks back throughout the entirety of his football career, going back to Penn State and Kentucky. And if his games were on if his high school games were on television, I'm sure he would have had some memeable moments there too. And kind of documenting who Will Levis is and how he's playing right now at Tennessean.com.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I spent most of Monday and Tuesday just finding old footage of Penn State and Kentucky games and tracking the TV cameras after he's made a mistake. And you want to say, oh, the NFL's different, guys change, guys mature. His first turnover at Penn State was a fumble off of a botched exchange that bounced off of his hands, and he couldn't get it to the running back in time. And immediately, sorry for the mic because it's right here, immediately it's just the exact reaction we've seen every time. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to paint this as oh, look at some dunce. It's just, he is who he is, and he plays the way he plays. But now the Titans have kind of painted him into a backwards bubble of, well, be yourself, but in this system that is new to you. And so it's this kind of growing pain of I think it was 33. I think it was 33 fumbles and interceptions lost that I found in college. And none of them look like what we're seeing now. People want to throw out regression. Oh, he's doing this, he's doing this. In order to regress, you have to go back to doing something you were doing before. This is a new thing he's going through. And I think that's probably progress. I don't want to try and seem overly positive, but that is a step towards progress when you're working out the kinks of something new, or it's an entirely new struggle, which makes it so hard to kind of track what's going on. Because the book on Will Levis, we all knew it in the draft. I was covering the SEC when he was in college. The book was, the dude throws into double coverage. The dude has too much confidence in his arm. He throws off his back foot a little bit too much. He's going to lower his shoulder and try and fumble getting the first down, all this stuff. With the exception of the diving for a first down on 3rd and short, he's not doing that stuff anymore. The stuff that was the bonkers bad. I mean, if you watch his throwing mechanics on some of those turnovers at Kentucky, he was just jumping backwards and launching. He was pure arm talent. And now it doesn't look like that. It seems like he's doing the right things, and they're not working out when they're the throwing turnovers. The decision turnovers are something completely different. But I don't know, counting the grace that it happened twice and it'll be over with. I don't know. But he is doing so many new things that it's hard to find a trend line of why this is happening.
Yeah, and that's the struggle with this entire season, right? Because we're coming into week 6, and this season, I've said it, I think anybody with any sense or semblance of sense regarding this team understands that it wasn't about a Super Bowl in 2024. It's about figuring out whether or not this guy can be your quarterback for the foreseeable future and not just the immediate, because of the circumstance that they find themselves in. And for me, it's so hard, just for any of us, it's so hard to get a gauge on, okay, is he actually making progress? Because as soon as, he throws the interception against Miami, he's what, 3 of 4 for 25 yards. He leaves halfway through the first quarter with that sprained AC joint that now he's going to play through. Again, an injury that he's had on his non-throwing shoulder, he told us earlier this week, and something that required surgery. Apparently this one is not as severe, which is good news for him. But, you were over there talking about Hardigree with me and Tehran this week about the way that they're trying to manage him. And the frustration is, one, do you actually know anything different about this football team after its first win? than you do today? And the answer is no, because the quarterback got hurt. Mason Rudolph came in, and it completely throws all the things that you're trying to see them build. Well, not everything that you're trying to see them build towards, but a lot of the stuff that you're trying to see them build towards out of whack. You have to wait another week. And then you see the good football in there. The difference is from last year to this year. Maybe it's not the F it, somebody's down there type of throws that he was making against the Falcons, but he's taking checkdowns. He's not just leaning on that arm strength. He's throwing from a better base. You see the footwork that's improved. All the things that they told us he was doing, he's doing. Except right. He just has these maniac moments, and the maniac moments undo all of it. And it does negate a lot of the progress that he may or may not be making, because people can't wrap their heads around what are you doing? What's in your head? Because every time we talk to in a press conference with this guy, Nick, I've made this joke like 3 or 4 times, but it's a psych eval every time he gets up there on the podium with
it. I guess it's my life purpose now to mention the Leroy Jenkins meme on every show in Nashville, but like, it's once a game, he goes into Leroy Jenkins mode. And I can't explain why that happens. The hero ball was something that was somewhat plausible at Kentucky because he was always the best player on the field. You go into hero ball when you're the best player on the field. But I don't know. I look at what's going on, and I think about Mason succeeding in this offense, and I think about beating Miami and all the stuff that was bad, all the stuff that was good in the first 3 games. I am such a firm believer in the idea of measure your expectations against what your expectations were. And I thought they were going to start 1-3, and they started 1-3.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not trying to sit here and say the sky is falling. It's so much worse than I expected. It's exactly what I expected. It's just a different thing. Like, I thought it would be the offense looks good. You see the promise, and the defense is the work in progress. It's been the inverse. And that's tough when your expectations aren't exactly right. But like, if I told you guys back in July, hey, the Titans are going to start 1-3, I think most people would be like, that sucks, but that's right. Like, yeah. I wish they didn't start 1-3, but that sounds about right. So they're where they are. They're where they are.
Yeah, and to your point, it's just a back-asswards way that we've gotten to 1-3, because it's a tough start to the season when you look at the opponents on paper prior to to having the concussion thing and Malik being out there for Green Bay instead of Jordan Love and everything that's gone down since then. So the question that is the theme of the show today is, does this quarterback give the Titans the best chance to win a football game on Sunday? Because they continue to back him, understandably so. That's the line, that's the company line that they should all have right now, even though it's been at least a roller coaster ride is the best way to describe this nonsense. But it's going to be hard if let's say he has just an average turnover, right? Like not a crazy turnover, not something that is broadcast across every place on the internet where NFL is discussed, because he's become the most memeable quarterback in the sport since Jameis Winston. How much longer can you keep a locker room in step with, no, I swear, guys, this guy, he gives us the best chance to win football games. Ignore the league leading turnover differential or individual turnovers that he's lost. No, just trust me, we're going to get there. I think maybe eventually.
So I'll leave names out of it, out of respect, but I talked to 2 or 3 guys in the locker room about the meme stuff this week.
Oh, did you?
Just a bunch of like, hey, do you guys notice Will's reactions? Like, if he's got his hands behind his head and can't believe it, like, does this ever register? And everyone was like, no. Like, it'd be weird if he didn't react. Like, it's football. Like, you catch anybody at a bad time, you're going to catch them. Like, I don't know. There is a difference between who gives this team the best chance to win in a week-in, week-out basis and who gives this team the easiest path to winning simply. Like, Will's going to give this team a better chance to win because he's more talented. Like, the more you play the talented guy, the more chance you're going to have. Now, if you want to win in the most succinct and simple way possible of just control the ball, don't let the other team beat you, dictate the pace of the game, hope that you can beat a team by letting them expose their own flaws. Yeah, Mason Rudolph makes sense because he's not going to unexpose an opponent's flaw. But like, you play to win, not to not lose. And I think the Titans knew to a certain degree they could beat the Dolphins by trying not to lose. I don't think that's going to play most NFL weeks. Like, that is not to say that it won't. Like, it could work, but your best path is always trying to win.
Yeah. And that's, even though it hasn't started ideally, or however, maybe they thought it was going to start as a coaching staff or front office, because of course you spend all the money, you acquire all the talent, and then you think you're competitive, the vibes are high, the honeymoon off season, la-di-da, this team never spends, now they're spending. And it all, it falls flat on its face for the first 3 weeks, and you got to figure it out against a high school offense like the Dolphins that are starting Tyler Huntley, to really get your feet, or feel like you've gotten your feet under you at all. And then as soon as you do, the at least for some contingent of the fan base, there is a quarterback controversy to be had, even if no such quarterback controversy actually exists, for people who are understanding how it is that they're trying to approach this thing. So, it's going to be interesting, because this is the league's worst defense right now. The Colts are wretched, and they're hurt.
Yeah.
It's not just the offense that's missing pieces, like Josh Downs and Michael Pittman, and Jonathan Taylor's not going to play on Sunday as well. They just put a starting corner on IR. Their corners have been a nightmare anyway. They are without DeForest Buckner. He's been on injured reserve. This is, I think, the last game that he would have to miss as a part of those 4 games.
Yeah, I think
when
so.
they placed him on IR a couple of weeks ago. So this, in theory, should be a get-right game. But like my thing with it all week, Nick, and I don't know if you were over there with Randy Jordan, the running backs coach. Maybe you were at some point, and maybe we just weren't at the same time.
I think I missed it, but go on.
But, we were talking about, hey, what if they just put the training wheels on and they don't let him attempt more than 20 passes, and you lean on the thing that you do well right now, which is you got a bunch of shit kickers up front. Run the football. Like, they're pretty good at running the football. And I understand that you have to have a quarterback who's going to at least make enough plays and be decisive enough to keep a defense honest. You can't Derrick Henry playbook this thing, because with Derrick, you understood that they're going to circle him every week as the guy that you have to stop, but you still have to respect him. And Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears aren't quite that yet. So it at least presented some opportunities in the play action passing game. Why don't you just club the Colts to death with your running game and try and get through this particular matchup, even if you don't have to do that each and every week?
I don't want to be contrarian for contrarian's sake, but like, the Titans are 20th in the NFL in yards per carry. I'm looking up what they are in rush efficiency right now. They're 17th in rush efficiency. Like, just because they are better at running the football right now than throwing it, let's not pretend like this is a dominant rushing attack that's going to come in and say, oh, you can club anybody. Like, they clubbed a Dolphins defense that, and even then they were averaging 4 yards per carry, and they had a 41-yard rush in there to skew it. Like, they ran the ball really well from their own 20-yard line to the Dolphins' 40-yard line, and then kicked 4 50-yard field goals. Like, this was not a team that was super hyper efficient running the ball in their one win. So yeah, it's very simplistic to say, oh, you're better at running the ball, just run it a bunch. But like, I think I've talked about this with you before. Everybody always likes to stick by this old standby. Well, if you average 4 yards per carry, you're going to win every game. 30 out of 32 teams every year are going to average 4 yards per carry. That's just how statistics work. Like, outliers happen. You're going to skew the data. Most teams are going to average 4 yards per carry. It's not as simple as line it up and run it every play. You got to actually play football. And this oversimplified, just do it. Just run the ball every play. There's not going to be any backlash. Look at the third quarter in Chicago. Look at how you had the lead. You were running the ball well. You tried to hammer the run, and you completely went cold. That's the risk you run. And I'm getting accusatory. I'm not accusing you or any of the listeners or any of the coaches of believing this.
Criticism. Like, it's a fair accusation, Nick, because I'm so tired of them making the simplistic look so difficult that I am now, reducing myself and my analysis to base level functions and saying, well, for God's sakes, just try and do something, the thing that you're better at, just try and do it well enough and make the plays that are there to be made, as if they have been able to make plays that were there to be made in the passing game routinely, because their offensive line can't hold up in pass pro. And also, like, something out of the Dolphins game that we can learn is that Levis contributes to the offensive line's problem in pass pro. He's a beat late on some of these throws. He's not as decisive as Mason is. the ball was coming out quicker, even if it's, what was he, 9 of 17 for 85 yards, Mason Rudolph against the Dolphins. It was enough to not expose, and I think Brian Callahan described it as protecting their offensive line in passing situations, because they can't get into one of these drop back games. So to your point, you can't become one dimensional just because that's the thing that you're slightly better at than the thing that you've been a bit catastrophic in. I'm just struggling to find something that they are making a defense respect, and saying at a certain point, you have to put something on film that's going to allow you opportunities, not just in this game, but down the line when teams are game planning for you.
This is my chance to oversimplify now, but like the teams that scare me the most in the NFL, and by extension, any level of football, if you have one or two players who are better than everybody else, just use them.
Yeah.
Like the Titans didn't run Derrick Henry a bunch because they loved running the football. They ran Derrick Henry a bunch because Derrick Henry was better than everybody else. And the Titans have a lot of talent on this offense. I don't know if they have figured out the ways to use that talent in ways that expose defenses that are unstoppable. Like Calvin Ridley's speed is an asset. DeAndre Hopkins' physicality and his catch radius is an asset. Tony Pollard's shiftiness is an asset. Tajay Spears in the pass game is an asset. I would argue the tight ends have been more of an asset than I thought they would this year. I've been impressed by Tyler Boyd in small packages when he can get over the middle and crisscross defenses. Like there are assets here to be used. They just haven't figured out the go-tos. And you got to have those one or two go-tos to actually scare teams into being afraid of stuff.
Yeah. But again, that oversimplifying, I think for a team like this can be okay. And that's kind of like, with a week 5 bye, week 5 buys suck largely. Like it doesn't really help anybody, especially for a team that hasn't had that much injury. Like I know there's some top of the line players like Levis and Jeff and Hopkins who have had injuries, but I almost think that a week 5 bye for a team with this specific kind of issue can be a good, all right, just everybody chill. Let's find our bread and butter. Let's make teams stop those bread and butter plays. But if they don't, let's just do the things that we do well right now, whether it's, running the football, whether it's utilizing the tight ends. Because there's some plays where, for example, Josh Wiley is wide ass open. They're able to hit him on an out route towards the sideline. And they just never go back to that specific play because they said, okay, we got it. Let's see if we can try something else. Like I almost hope that they would not permanently, but reduce the playbook to the stuff that they have found success with, or the stuff that they're the most comfortable with in this moment, before they try and flesh out the rest of what they're trying to do. Because to your point, Ridley, I mean, I know it didn't get out there publicly on social media, and I'm glad that it didn't, but like there's some level of frustration that's building between the lack of and not that Calvin has said anything or been a malcontent or had any kind of emotional outburst on the sideline, but like you can tell that there is something there about the level of involvement that is not satisfactory to either side. And it's a new coaching staff and a first-time head coach who's also the play caller here. And there's some onus on him as well to try and get these guys in better positions for them to succeed. And right now it just feels like we're all over the place with it.
Yeah, and I wrote about this back in February, so I don't remember the numbers on it, but like I think there's 9 or 10 instances in the last 15 years where a team's had a first-year head coach, first-year offensive play caller, first-time defensive play caller, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And none of them were particularly good in year one. I think the best would have been Frank Reich with the Colts his first year. I think they won 8 or 9 games that first year. Some of them have turned out to be really good partnerships, like Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh in San Francisco. They struggled that first year, but they figured things out. Some have been catastrophic errors that were fired after one season. Like there's no actual rhyme or reason trend line to pick of, oh, all of this newness means good, all of this newness means bad. But what it does mean is it's new. Like this is new for everybody. And so like I am not putting blame on anyone for not knowing how to be Bill Belichick or Andy Reid in their first year. But like this is a growing pain. And again, to back what I said earlier of like expect your own expectations. We spent an entire offseason talking about how all of this was going to be new. And like I'm not holding it against anybody that what kind of we thought would happen happened. Now it's got to get better. It's not an excuse to always take an excuse, but like I don't know. I am not thinking the sky is falling because Calvin Ridley has 9 catches through 4 games. Like, he's going to catch more passes. He will. I'm pretty confident in that.
And again, they have these jobs for a reason. Talking about the coaching staff, they will understand, learn, and grow. One would think, if they're even baseline adept at this. And by the way, about expecting your own expectations, like you said, like Callahan had that expectation right before the season started. You got to earn the right to have expectations. This is a grow as we go type of situation for both sides of the ball. And then even he, after the 0-3 start, he's acting like, okay, his expectations were different based on what he was messaging to us at the time, because there's the what the F are you doing moments and all the different things that led them to that point. Quickly, before I let you get out of here, because I don't want to keep you too long on a Friday, the defense.
Sure.
The defense is good in terms of total yardage. Now, when you peel through some of the advanced metrics and some of the EPA per drop back against them and stuff like that, they're not affecting the quarterback, and they're just right now, it seems, content to stopping the run on early downs, and then we'll throw our creativity at you on third down. They're playing a ton of press right now. They've got a corner to do it. We'll see how viable Jarvis Brownlee can be in an extended sample size, because of course Cheeto Awuzie on injured reserve. But they don't have a legitimate pass rush, despite having the top defense in terms of total yardage in the sport. And that makes me think that at some point, just like everything that happens throughout the ebbs and flows, the peaks and valleys of an NFL season, like that's going to become less sustainable if they don't, 1, get better as a unit, 2, get Jeff more involved in that pass rush, and 3, consider adding a body there. I know they worked out a couple of guys this week as far as edge rushers go, but I'm looking at Yannick Ngakoue on the Ravens practice squad and thinking, why the hell has nobody picked him up? I'm looking. I mean, I know Hassan Reddick's agency, just CAA, dropped him because he continues to hold out with the Jets, but like, that's a star pass rusher. I'd rather them expend capital in that direction, even if he's a bit of a petulant child, because I know that he can bother the quarterback, and they're not doing that very well right now.
I've used this metaphor a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. Adele, the multi-million-dollar singer-songwriter?
I thought you were referencing the restaurant on Broadway by the McDonald's, but yes, I know it.
The famous singer. Everybody loves to talk about how she has the most beautiful voice in the world, and they're probably right. She's very good at singing. But she doesn't like do the high and low runs thing that we usually associate with great singers. Like when you hear like a Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston of the up and down in the octave range, Adele has that one range, and she's really, really good at it. And we're just like, oh, she's so good at that one thing. Do that one thing over and over again. Yeah. That's how I feel about this Titans defense. They're really good at doing the one thing that most people never deem impressive, which is just like playing good first and second down defense, just like pestering an offense into being annoyed and out of focus. They're really good at that. And so like they can't hit the high notes, they can't hit the low notes right now. They're not forcing the turnovers, they're not affecting the quarterback. Those are the two things that you associate with great defense. But turnover luck is notoriously volatile. It's fragile. It's not something that happens.
Evidenced by this team, certainly.
It is famously something that you're great at one year, you're not great at the next year, depending on scheme, depending on coaches. None of it matters. It's just random. And pass rush, not as volatile. It's just really dependent on, do you have one dude who can do it? And the Titans haven't used a first, second, or third round pick on an outside linebacker, I think, since Harold Landry. Just the investment in that position and in pass rush has mostly been in free agency, which obviously Bud Dupree and Arden Key and stuff like that. Vic Beasley hasn't necessarily panned out to huge results. And I'm just saying the things that have happened. You haven't invested in that position the same way you've invested in just about every other position on the field. So like, I'm not sitting here and saying it's okay that you don't have a good pass rush. It's one of the 4 pillars of being good at football. In the modern NFL, you got to throw the football, you got to protect the person who throws the football, you got to rush the person who throws the football, and you got to stop the person who throws the football from completing it to the guy who catches the football. Breath. But I don't know, man. Like, they're good at so many other things that it's stunning that they're so successful, despite not being good at the 2 things you need to be good at. And I am choosing to be impressed rather than annoyed. All
reasonable assessments for a football team that through the first month of the season we expected to be a work in progress. So It's the nature of the NFL. We go through this every year. The reactions, because you have to wait a full week or nearly a full week in the case of most teams, to get the next sample size. And I think some guys like playing Thursday night football if for no other reason to just get the bad smell of losing out of the way. If you dropped one the week before, it's a quicker turnaround, even if the bodies feel a little worse. Now, no Thursday night football game for this team. Obviously, they've expended their one primetime game, their one scheduled primetime game, and they got to win, even if everybody else was watching Detroit, Seattle. But he's Nick Suss of the Tennessean. You can read him at Tennessean.com. You can follow him at Nick Suss on Twitter. His analysis is excellent. His journalism is excellent, and we appreciate his time here on the podcast. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, happy to be here.